I'm going to stray a little bit from the bowling SpareTalk presentations because this is the week that commemorates the 47th year of what I experienced to be the hottest week in my lifetime. And that was back when I lived in Washington, D.C. And my brother was into tennis. So we would once in a while walk up to what they call the Barron. It was a facility in the northwest area. It's about 2 miles from our house. And every year they would have what they called at one time was the Star News tournament, a tennis tournament. And it later became the Legg Mason event, and then probably became something else during the time, just changed names every so often. But in 1978, it was an incredibly hot summer, and Washington, D.C. had hot summers. I remember when I worked a few years later, when I worked at the Washington Navy Yard, there'd be summers where it was so hot and humid, it just seemed like every day I'd have what I call humidity headaches. Just high humidity and temperatures that were always seemingly in the 90s and touching 100 degrees at some point. But in 1978, there was a tennis tournament at this Barron facility. It's a pro tournament. And my brother and me went up there earlier in the week. Then the next day was the semifinal, and I think the temperature was up to 104 just on the thermometer with high humidity. And Connors played the Spaniard named Jose Higueras, and he surprisingly won that one in straight sets. And I would have thought that Higueras would have been more accustomed to the really hot temperatures from South America. And then on the final day of the tournament, Connors was in the final. He played Eddie Dibbs, which was he was like, between him and Sky Harold Solomon, they were like known as the Bagel Twins, and they were basically just human backboards. They would just get the ball back and play it and basically wear the opponents down. But that day, the temperature was at least 102, but at courtside, it was 108. And the humidity was, again, real high. I think the day before it was like 80% humidity with that high heat. So it was so hot on that Sunday of the final, we didn't go up for that one, that we had a brownout in our neighborhood in Washington, D.C., and we didn't have air conditioning in the house. So we couldn't see the final because they would broadcast it on PBS, usually the ATP tournaments and things like that. But since we had no electricity, we couldn't see the match. We only found out later about the Connors won 7-5, 7-5. It's a tough match. But it was, like I was saying, it was so hot that my brother and me, we actually took a drive out to Virginia to see the newly released movie called Laser Blast, which was came around after Star Wars. This was in like a year later. But I found that to be a really good movie, even though it was, probably a lot of people didn't like it too much because it wasn't real high budget, but it was extremely entertaining. But I wanted to read a little bit from the newspaper accounts from that time, just to verify the temperatures that I have quoted about that. But what's interesting about the year of 1978, as an aside to the heat, it was like 7 months later in 1979 in February, and that was the blizzard of 79, not the blizzard of 78 like has been mentioned on Facebook, where the Washington, D.C. area got bombarded with, it was on Washington's birthday. It was 19 inches that came down pretty much overnight. And I think the weather forecast had only called for an inch or two, if that. So that was like an extreme of snow 7 months later from that extreme of heat, that incredible heat. So I thought that was a noteworthy point in the history of my lifetime as far as the weather goes too. But anyway, I'm going to read the accounts from that heat wave we had, so you might get a little bit of interest out of this. From the Miami Herald from the year 1978. sweltering semi won by Connors. Jimmy Connors overcame 104-degree heat and Spain's Jose Higueras 7-6, 6-2 Saturday to reach today's final of the $175,000 Washington Star International Men's Tennis Tournament. Connors will meet the winner of the other semifinal between Spain's Manuel Orantes and North Miami Beach's Eddie Dibbs. A thermometer attached to the base of the umpire's chair read 104 as Connors and Higueras squared off. "This is the hottest weather I ever played in," said Higueras, who complained more of the humidity, which neared 80%. "It feels like you're out there being plastered with barbecue sauce waiting to be thrown on the charcoal," said Connors. "Then, after about 3 games, you're on the charcoal." Both players tried to conserve strength and energy for moments when they were needed most, such as the first set tiebreaker. Higueras started the tiebreaker with an ace, his first of the match. After an exchange of passing shots, he took a 2-1 lead, but it was the last time he led. Connors drew Higueras to the net, then blasted a cross-court forehand that even Higueras applauded. Connors followed with a backhand passing shot, a service winner, and a cleverly disguised topspin lob that landed on the baseline to give him a 5-2 lead. Higueras came back to take the next 2 points, but Connors chose to attack rather than play a baseline game on the slow clay court. Under pressure as Connors rushed the net, Higueras netted a backhand, then missed the sideline with a forehand to give Connors the tiebreaker 7-4 in the set. Thereafter, Connors coasted home. He broke Higueras' serve in the 6th game with a blistering cross-court backhand and reeled off the next 2 games for the match. "I was pretty patient and I was pleased with the way my serve was working," said Connors. "I got out of a couple holes with my serve alone." He said Orantes and Dibbs were tough clay court players whom he has met numerous times and from whom he knows what to expect. "We'll just go out and beat the heck out of each other for 2 or 3 hours and someone will win," said Connors. From the Victoria Advocate from the year 1978. This is July 24, the day after the event. Jimmy Connors, sweating and struggling in 108-degree heat, outlasted Eddie Dibbs 7-5, 7-5 Sunday to win the $24,000 first prize in the Washington Star International Men's Tennis Tournament. At the crest of a week-long heat wave that turned the stadium court into a furnace, Connors' mental toughness was the difference, keeping his game at a high level, although both players were obviously near exhaustion by the end of the match. Dibbs appeared done when he lost his serve at love, allowing Connors to go ahead 4-3 in the final set. The Floridian made 4 poor, sloppy ground strokes to allow Connors to hold serve and go ahead 5-3. Then Dibbs, reaching for reserves of stamina, held his own serve and watched Connors double fault 3 times in the 10th game to make it 5-5. Connors refused to fold. The next game had 7 deuces. Connors finally ended it with a sharply angled cross-court forehand, which Dibbs couldn't run down, and a backhand volley to make it 6-5. Connors refused to sit down at the break and then served out the match, which ended when Dibbs flailed at a high backhand that went several feet beyond the baseline. Dibbs won $12,000 for finishing second. "This is the hottest weather I have ever played in," Dibbs said. "The humidity was terrible. My legs got very heavy out there, and sometimes they wouldn't move at all." Dibbs gave credit to Connors for playing his best on the most critical points of the match. "He always seems to win the big points against me. He's a great competitor and he knows what to do on those points. He never gives up," Dibbs said. Connors limped out of the stadium to the interview area but refused to acknowledge that the heat had bothered him much at all. "Physically, I didn't feel anything bad," said Connors, who went through a complete change of clothes, including dry sneakers, during the match. "It was pretty brutal out there, but I thought I hit the ball real well," he said. Asked about the last time he double faulted 3 times while serving for the match, Connors said, "When I was 4 years old." I went for too big a serve on those points because I had been serving great, said Connors, who went to California after his Wimbledon loss to work with his mother, Gloria, a former teaching pro, on the flaws that he felt had contributed to his straight-set loss to Bjorn Borg in the finals. So for the tennis fans, that's a piece of history that probably the rest of the country wouldn't be aware of. But that heat in D.C. was unbelievable because I lived through it.